When I came out, people sort of talked about like, oh yeah, that would be really crazy if our movement ended up spending a lot of energy fighting for the right to get married or fighting for the rights of, queers to like go kill people around the world. But that's what happened. I left queer work pretty much as someone in the 90s, so it's been like 20 years. Right at the moment when I saw the degree to which that the sort of institutionalization, non-privatization took out the liberation politics, was part of taking out the liberation history and politics from our movement, was part of taking out the base building, movement building, essence of a lot of the movements for the 60s and 70s, and opened the door to the corporate, both the corporate organization of those actual organizations, but sort of the corporatization of the funding and the framing and everything about the gay movement.
There's a fundamental tension between especially the grassroots sector and the national sector around what we're organizing for.
The one thing that I've seen observed by many people about LGBT philanthropy specifically is that it really fetishizes legal and policy change, that even, it doesn't even support basic services to people as much as other realms of philanthropy. It really loves legal and policy change, especially at the federal level, and that's what it sees as success and change.
The urgency around legislation and making sure certain forms of legislation pass often comes at the cost of leaving some people's lives out.
In the last decade, that equality agenda has been kind of the immovable framework around which funding decisions happen.
And that is really remarkable because it's very different oftentimes than what our communities see as success and change. Many of us have lived in states for decades that have, laws against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and in some places gender identity, and we haven't seen an alleviation of poverty for queer and trans people, and we haven't seen the cops stop brutally harming queer and trans people, and we haven't seen these changes, but the philanthropic world has decided that that's what a win is. And so that's what people are funded to do. So the real things that might alleviate those conditions are not funded, right? Or people are just kind of doing it on their own, just desperately trying to provide each other with the basic things we need, trying to really get to the root causes of the harm in our communities, the poverty in our communities, the experiences of police violence. But that work is seen as like too small or too local or too slow.
I can tell you from personal experience, having been the executive director of Queers for Economic Justice, that organizationally we've had periods where foundations said to us, nobody cares about poor lesbians on welfare, so we're not funding you.
Doing work with people who are currently incarcerated or navigating other kinds of state violence is not something that people really want to fund.
We consider some of the kinds of more, radical or even progressive queer configurations, I would say of, the Silver Rivera Law Projects or the Queers for Economic Justices of the world, those kinds of organizations, Audre Lorde Project. Lots of those organizations, even though they started in the late 90s, around 2000, have roots in sort of anti-policing and queer street economies, that kind of work that started in the wake of Stonewall, right? But then we see, as the AIDS crisis happens and white gay men become particularly kind of active in, ways that they hadn't necessarily been before in large numbers, and white gay men who were of a particular kind of like, elite class, that the money and resources creates a new infrastructure for a kind of gay Inc. nonprofit.
It was very painful to watch how conservative our organizations were becoming. And I honestly couldn't have imagined this moment then.